Better health, better care, lower cost. Everyone's talking about health care, but how much do you know? Better Health is brought to you in part by Sleep Better Northwest. Explore the healthcare system and listen to experts with your host, Sue Lani Madsen, here on Better Health.
Okay, well, welcome to Better Health. My guest today is Stephanie Regalado, and she is also a host of a program here on Spokane Talks, but that's not why she's here today. She's here because both of us have had been touched by suicide within our family and in our community, and we're both committed to breaking the silence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's probably the biggest problem is we don't want to talk about it. It's not comfortable. It's so sad sometimes, and the tissues are over on the side.
Well, I feel like I'm making up for the time that was silent after my brother had committed suicide 2 weeks before my senior year in high school, because we just couldn't talk about it back then. And lately, when you had asked me to be on, I was like, gosh, me again? Because people are going to get sick of me. But I was like, no, I have the experience and the platform, so we might as well use them for good.
Yeah, and it's we're they always have the awareness months, right? I don't really care which month it was. I think it was last month.
It was
but
last
whatever.
month.
This will be on the web and available all year round. But it's just a good thing to stop and provide that awareness, to provide the phone number that's available, because there's always something available. But this is more about how we each have that opportunity to listen to those little nudges.
Yeah.
And when we see somebody who, it's a rough day, it's okay to say, are you having a really rough day?
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
And we are also moving into the season of seasonal affective disorder, the SAD season.
Yes, I'm trying not to even think about it, actually.
So is that something that you struggle with?
Well, I don't know to what degree, but I do feel more depressive. My medium is fairly happy.
Yeah.
And people say sometimes it's naivety, but I've lived long enough that I'm not naive any longer. I just have this disposition that's happier. But during the winter, it drags on. It's a little gray for my liking. So I definitely kind of feel myself kind of shift down.
Yeah, it can affect a lot of people. I know that something growing up, it was something that my father struggled with. And sometime after Thanksgiving, he just wasn't talking to the family, and he was just it's much easier to see what was going on now from my perspective.
Right.
But it took it was a number of years, probably a good 8 to 10 years, that I recall that being the pattern until he had the family physician gave him a couple of tips that really helped. And I want to talk first about what some of those symptoms are. And one of them is that feeling depressed most nearly every day. It's like it's a slog, a gray slog to get up and get out of bed, and that shouldn't be what it is, unless you only got 4 hours of sleep because the baby's crying. Then you have every reason to be a little grumpy in the morning. But this is beyond grumpy. This is overwhelming. And so, what is something that lets you know that you need to do something else?
I always fall into deep contemplation about my life, like everything that's ever happened, where I've missed the mark a lot of times. So I think of it in dark ways, but I know that I need to take baby steps. When I've suffered extreme grief and loss, I know that there are times where I've had to just tell myself, stand up. I just break it down to tiny little things. Walk to the kitchen, pour a glass of water.
1 minute at a time.
Yeah, you break it down to these little minuscule moments of just some movement, so it doesn't settle into your bones and keep you there. And
that's some of the symptoms are that just feeling a loss of interest in activities, just low energy, just it's a slog. Difficulty concentrating, all of those things can be a problem. And activity is what the doctor actually sort of prescribed for Dad, which was got him involved with a pickup volleyball game that happened every I don't know if it was every evening, but maybe it was a couple of times a week, so that
Yeah.
he had some exercise someplace. And he
Yeah.
talked about that with me, that made a difference, that he could go out there and kind of get those frustrations out, get moving, and creates those good endorphins when you've had a good workout. But it's taking that first baby step to get out the door.
And sometimes I just need to put some music on. I know music that I just cannot deny, that I can't sit through, that always lifts my spirits, that reminds me of happy times or hopeful times or something. So music is another big one for me.
Yeah.
And reaching out to a friend. It's always good to have a lifeline.
And that's part of that conversation. That's part of that breaking the silence.
Yes.
It's okay to say, you know, it's been pretty bleak this week. I've actually thought about suicide. It is okay to say that sentence out loud.
I've actually had friends and people who are close to me who have said that. And I'm not scared of it because I know if you're talking about it, there's flow and there's movement. So you don't get stuck in the darkness. And so I always think of that like an actionable thing. It's very healthy, and I know that the hardest part is for some people is to hear it, because it feels like a lot of pressure when someone's telling you that, potentially, because you feel like you have to say something maybe to help them or help cheer them up or help lift them out of that spot.
Right. You could feel responsible for all outcomes, and that's not fair either.
No. I mean, because not one person is responsible no matter what is happening. And so really being comfortable just sharing who you are. And I think sometimes that happens with age, but I don't know, because you were saying that the statistics, it just depends on occupation.
And occupationally, or just if you're looking at cohorts by occupation, those involved in farming, forestry, fisheries, logging, those kinds of occupations, agricultural occupations, have a 4 times higher suicide rate than the national average.
And I wouldn't even guess that, because I love being out in nature. But I guess when you're working
when
solo,
you're making your living on, you're working solo, and you can't control the rain, you can't control
all the variables, right?
Markets, you can't control whether the equipment breaks down at the wrong time. There are so many things that are out of your control.
Yeah.
And so it's risk. There's a lot of risk in those occupations. They don't often come with a guaranteed paycheck.
Right.
And the other piece is cultural, which kind of is, it's part of that breaking the silence.
Right.
It's that you don't, if you're in a culture that's kind of suck it up and keep moving.
Yeah.
If you have a day where you just can't do that you feel like you just can't do that for one more minute. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Who do you talk to?
Yeah. And I would venture to say, just based on my own experiences, that almost everyone has a moment where they're in their chosen field or profession, they would have a moment where they think they don't want to do it anymore. They can't. I don't know. That's a challenge. I don't know what you've experienced through your life, or sometimes you're like, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
You can have days like that, no matter what it is you're doing. It's just, and then that's the problem is, if that day seems like it will never end.
Right.
And it's just making it through that day to get to the next day.
Yeah.
And you put enough of those in, you put enough of those together, and you can get past it. It's getting past it.
Yeah.
So if someone, I know I'm doing some teaching down at WSU right now, and they're really big on stressing that for us as instructors to know how to direct students to resources that are available. And so one of the simplest thing is if this is more than just listening sympathetically and saying, okay, check in with me in the morning because I really care about you, and that might be all that's needed for a friend of yours. But if it takes more than that, well, there is a suicide hotline with people who know the right questions to ask, and can advise either you as a friend who's just been confided in,
right,
or you if you're someone who's having that issue. In fact, that's probably a big thing that people don't think about. You could call the suicide prevention hotline not because you're thinking about committing suicide or feeling that down, but because you have a friend that is, a friend or family member that is.
Yeah. And they say one of the number one things to do is just ask. As a parent, through Spokane Public Schools over the last few years, and they've been speaking of it more and more and trying to create more awareness and empathy with the children, how they connect with one another, and how parents are connecting with their own children. It's just to come out and ask them, not just how are you feeling, how's school going, but have you or would you contemplate suicide.
Has that crossed your mind? And it's okay to, just letting them know it's okay to admit that.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, with that, just to check in to see how you are.
When my grandmother died, my father's mother died, he found some letters in a safe deposit box, and I read some of them, and they were from his father to his mother when they were engaged. They hadn't married yet, and I read those, and I realized my grandfather, I didn't know him very well because they lived in New Jersey most of my life. I knew him in his later years, but I realized this is a man who had struggled with depression. It clearly came through in his writing, and I looked at that. I looked at my father's history. I looked at a period that I had for about a year of dealing with that, and that's a different story we can talk about. And I immediately wrote to my daughter and said, "Okay, so when you were between 20 and 30, there's this pattern. You need to know about it. And if you see anything like this happen in your own life, if you start recognizing these patterns in your own life, you have to call me." Because this is not healthy. And but I think she mostly inherited her father's genes on that part. That wasn't her problem.
How did she handle the conversation?
Well, very matter-of-factly, because she's used to me
I know
doing things like that.
My kids are like, you don't even know it's awkward when you're talking, Mom, but it's awkward. But now it's just been awkward all their lives. So
she's used me having conversations where I am planting this in your head so it will come back and haunt you later. So so that's kind of what we're doing here. We want to plant this in our listeners' heads. This will come back to you sometime, and you'll say, that little nudge, I need to follow up on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's really important to go back to, the little nudge. Because we feel that, and if we are in the moment, I mean, there's all this talk about being present and everything. It's become a little cliche, but truly, if you're kind of within that space and not working subconsciously, because so often we're driving to a place, we're not even thinking about where we're driving.
Right.
But if you can kind of try to break out of that and realize what you're doing and where you are, just have that awareness, you will detect things around you. You will feel things for others. You may walk by someone and feel like, there was a story about, it was after an event downtown, and someone was walking across the bridge, and there was a young man kind of hunched over near the bridge, and someone who would normally walk that path constantly, a professional that works downtown, wouldn't even notice. But he walked by, and something caught him about it. So he turned around and went and talked to this young man, and it was a young man who was in serious need of mental health intervention at that time, and he was able to get him help in that moment.
We're at that point where we take a break in the middle of the program, so let's come back and talk about some of those nudges. You have a good story about that, and I've got one, and we'll talk about following up on the nudge.
Okay, perfect. That was a quick 30.
Hi, I'm Larry Myers, owner of River Ridge Hardware. Welcome to our garden center here on the corner of Garland and Driscoll. We have fresh plants that come in weekly from all of our local growers. We can make your garden look like our garden. Here at River Ridge, we've been here 30 years. We're your full-service neighborhood hardware store. This is our sprinkler aisle, where my knowledgeable staff will help you put together your sprinkler system so it will make your yard lush green for the spring and summer. This is River Ridge Hardware's rental center, where we provide a multitude of equipment for rent for the do-it-yourselfer. Next time you're working on your home or yard this spring and summer, stop by, say hi, and we'll help you get the project done.
See you tomorrow night, and thanks again for taking care of the painting.
I got this.
Bye.
Weekends are made for painting. Let the experts at Rada Paint take care of you.
Hi. This looks amazing.
Rada Paint, over 80 years of quality, tradition, and trust. Find it in every can.
Well, hello there, Internet. My name is Brandon Magruder, and I'm just coming out of the Spokane Talks building, and I'm excited to bring to you guys a new announcement that I am going to be the new host of the Youth Spotlight program. Now, our old host, Colin, he's off to Texas Christian University to pursue a degree in theater and broadcasting, and you know what? That's great for him, but that's what I like to call adulting. And you know, I don't think that we have time for adulting with the Youth Spotlight program. What the Youth Spotlight program is here to do is to bring to you guys news, the greatest news of some of the most amazing people here throughout Spokane that are, just going in high school, maybe about to go into college, you know. These people are achieving life streams and they are so young. And I think that these are stories that you guys should know about. And I'm so excited to be bringing them to you. Now, I'm a Spokane native myself. I've been performing throughout Spokane in various different shows. I just closed the show of Music Man, and you know, I guess I like long walks on the beach, keeping my business attire, while also keeping my French fry socks on close at hand. You know, it's going to be a great year, and I'm so excited to be your guys' host. So tune into Youth Spotlight to watch me interview some of the most amazing people. Thank you and have a great day.
Okay, well, we're going to talk a little bit about that, the importance of following up on those nudges when something seems just off. And I had a friend shared a little story on Facebook about being in a restaurant and the waitress was clearly distressed. Something was just not going right with her, and her, it showed in her service. She wasn't. Yeah. And Lisa said, you know, she just thought she's having a really bad day. She left her a big tip. Yeah. Because she just needs a little bit of encouragement, but she didn't know how to start. I mean, it's not somebody she knows. It's starting a conversation seemed appropriate, but just that was following up. That was how she followed up on that nudge. Yeah. This young woman needs an encouragement. Yeah. So you had a story. Your son actually followed up on one of those nudges.
Right. And when we asked him, like, at what point did you decide that you needed to go toward? He thought he heard the word help coming from a bridge after prom in the spring, after a senior prom, right by the Hotel RL, which is now the new name. I can't remember. Continental or something. I don't know. But so the Washington Street Bridge, I cannot drive over that without envisioning him standing there with this young woman who I have never seen, so I don't know what she looks like. But so he started running, and I asked him, at what point how did you decide? And he goes, I didn't decide. I just was running all of a sudden. He said, you don't have. And then later, I mean, he was so actually appalled by all the attention that the story received. And I'm a storyteller. I'm in media. This is what I do. And I know that sharing and speaking of things is healing, and it puts us all on level playing ground and a playing field. But he said that for his moment of humanity, which he said it should be humanity, it should make the news when someone just does the right thing. Yeah. I mean, why there was no other option in his mind. But I don't know, he has such a purity to him that a lot of people don't hold on to, I think, through their lives when they become busy and are grappling with their own challenges. But one of the best boosts that we can do for ourselves is doing something kind for someone else. And that's another thing. Actually, Elizabeth Gilbert of Eat, Pray, Love and Big Magic was in Spokane within the last couple of weeks for the National Women in Business Leadership Conference that we so fortunately were able to host. But she said that gratitude, going into a place of gratitude, is one of those places that can really boost you up. And when you're having difficulty finding gratitude in your own life, just trying to break out of that for a second to say something nice to someone else, or to make eye contact, or do something kind, like leave a bigger tip if you can. How that tends to shift. It makes these little shifts, and the more that you do that, the more that becomes your operating system, and you can kind of.
So that when your son observed somebody who seemed to be in trouble, it just seemed to him the automatic response was to do the kind thing.
Well, and we've always done that. We've been in grocery stores, and there was another time, not that when he was an early teen, when a little kid had dropped a soda, but all four of the children were supposed to share that one soda, and it was the first child, and the mom didn't have. The mom was like, "I'm so sorry, that's all I had." And I just quietly asked her if I could step in and just purchase them all their own little sodas, and she allowed me to do that. And then she's so sweet. She just kind of poured her heart out to me. It just breaks my heart as a mom because I know you want to provide for your kids so much. And she was just saying she was just kind of in a lean time. And I understand that. And I told her I understand that. I was like, hey, sister, we're in this together. And I said, if there's anything else that you need to grab while you're here, please do. And I'll just add it to I'll just tell them to add it to my bill. And so my son has seen that throughout life just because I have felt compelled to just care about others. It just comes naturally to me to be a humanist, I guess.
Yeah, I think those acts of reaching out to someone with kindness can have a ripple that you will never know whether you never. And that's the hardest part, is that there's not a feedback loop that tells you, yep, that was. Well, except now with your son, now that one had a direct feedback loop.
Well, it did, because it went viral, went all across the country. It was
because she was standing at the Washington Street Bridge, and
yes, well, and we've never. Christopher's never disclosed her name. He shared her name with me, but we've never disclosed
that's fine.
Her name, and we don't know actually how her life is carried on. We are constantly thinking about her and sending good vibes out into the world for her. But because it was so amazing, we received messages from all across the country, really. Anyone who's been touched, and most people in some way have been touched by suicide. At least they know someone who knows someone. But and some of the hardest ones, most emotional ones to receive were those who said because he showed that he cared about a stranger, that gives them pause in acting on their own suicidal thoughts.
Because they know that a stranger might care about them.
Because
just knowing that possibility exists,
When they would write to me, because I wrote it and he was a teen, and so some people reached out to him. It was overwhelming for him, and I helped him go through and sift through some, but a lot of them came to me and they said, your son, please let your son know what he has done. He didn't just save her life. I didn't think I was going to get emotional, but at that moment, but I'm considering that he's saving mine, because I'll never forget. Because Christopher told the young woman, when he said, just promise me that you'll always remember this moment and how brave you are and how brave you are to climb down and face life again when you have so much pain to deal with. And that, that's the most courageous thing of all.
That's very mature advice.
Well, that was the most shocking part. Not that he ran to her to assist. All that was hard for us to wrap our mind around. But the things that he said to her, when he said, I understand, I don't know how I would want to, I don't know if I could live with that either. Some of the abuses she was sharing with him. And he said, she had mentioned that she had had a friend who had committed suicide, and she thought it was a beautiful thing for her friend. And Christopher said, well, you don't know that it was beautiful. The only way you know that anything's beautiful if you stay alive and continue experiencing life to see that things are beautiful. But nobody knows that when you're gone, it's beautiful. So anyway.
No, I think if for someone who is a person of faith, and I have which is actually where at the time that I was feeling like I was at the bottom of a well. And had been dealing with that for several months. What pulled me out was really looking up from the bottom of the well and seeing the hand of Christ reaching out. All you have to do is grab it, and that made a difference. And and there are some of the Psalms are really deeply, clearly reflecting that kind of agony that anybody can go through. It's a very, very common human experience, and whatever helps you with that. So what's been that's made a huge difference to me from then on. But it's also a resource. It's also a resource in terms of being able to reach out. It's that, okay, that's something that you can do in prayer, that you can do. It's not just your strength, that you can trust that the right words will be provided. And it's not, because it's not about you. It's exactly. And so if you're there if you're put there in that place for that purpose, the right words will come to you.
Well, and the twist to this is my son has been an atheist for a few years, and I'm fine with however my kids want to explore life, and I have my own spirituality that I share with them, but I'm not going to force anything on them, and I think it's a sign of intelligence, and when you're trying to figure your own way out, your own path, and not what your mom tells you to do, but it was really neat for him to say, Mom, some things just don't make sense about this. Like his text from his dad, that his dad had arrived, came in late after instead of before. And he's like, that never happened before. And I didn't point that out to him. I just said that this is just one of those moments where you were aware and you were open. And whatever you want to think happened, you listen to your intuition, or some people may have said that it was God used you in that moment, or the universe and the stars aligned, or whatever. We all have those moments in us if we're open to it.
We do.
And we
be
can
open to those.
Truly, like you said, it's not about us. If you can let it go and just be in that moment and sit.
And take the very tiny risk of being embarrassed.
Yeah.
Which is all it is. The only thing you're risking by reaching out and saying something to someone, are you really okay?
Yeah.
Is being embarrassed. That's really survivable.
Mm-hmm. Truly. It's much more survivable than not following that nudge and seeing that something doesn't end well for someone you care about.
So be sure to read between the lines on social media. Everything is not perfect.
Yes, that's true. I saw a gal that I follow on Instagram. She said, everybody needs to know what you see on social media is not real life. And trust me, and she's has, ton, like 200,000 followers or more. And she's saying, we paint what we want to paint here, but you really don't know me. You don't know what I experience. You don't know this, blah, blah, blah. So, and that goes for every single person.
Yeah, and whether even before the age of social media, we go out in public and you spruce it up. You spruce it up and put on your best.
Yeah.
So we have to wrap up, and I want to wrap up with a couple of things here on one of the risk factors is living far from the equator for seasonal affective disorder. And an interesting bit of trivia I was told is that most of the state of Washington's population actually lives at a higher latitude than the bulk of Canada's population. We are really up a little bit higher. We have a more extreme seasonal swing than we are perhaps aware of. So we should take the advice of the Nordic countries where there is no bad weather. There's just you have the wrong coat and boots. And go outside, shovel snow, take a walk. Don't lock yourself inside, even on those gray days. Get out, get that fresh air, and if anything else, a good breath of really cold air will
make you feel alive.
So yes. So let's break the silence.
Yeah, continue talking about it. Reach out to those. And if you don't feel like, I think people would be surprised. Risk being surprised by other people. I think by reaching out to someone, just noticing the way that maybe your friends on social media and the way that they speak of their own lives, they feel authentic and I would want anyone to reach out to me. Even if they were a peer stranger, and if they weren't feeling.
So take a risk, reach out, and be kind.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Glad you could come by.
Thank you.
Better Health with Sue Lani Madsen is produced in Spokane, Washington by SpokaneTalksOnline.com, which is solely responsible for its content. Better Health is brought to you in part by Sleep Better Northwest. Ask Sue Lani a question, recommend a guest or topic, and hear this program again online anytime at SpokaneTalksOnline.com. Cheers to better health, and thanks for listening.